International Media TV. Television that listens to you.
Hi, I'm Johnny Burrell. Welcome to the program.
You are responsible for the life that we lead, that you lead. We are responsible for the country we have. We are responsible for everything that we see, feel, and hear around us. So let's be responsible about what comes in our homes and changes our behavioral patterns, our habits, whether we hate or love each other, and showing our children how to solve problems not through the end of a gun, but through negotiation and through love.
Well, I guess the first thing I should say to all of you and to my guest here and my compadre, Harriet Tubman Wright, this is the first time we've really sort of formally been introduced, and it's really a nice way to meet that Jerrylange brought us together.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to share stories about a dear friend.
You were talking actually before we started taping about the window, which I didn't know anything about. I'd love to hear that part of the story.
Well, at one point, Jerry lived on Alice Street, a few blocks from here, and she was on the ground floor, and you're supposed to ring a buzzer. Well, we didn't. We'd knock on her window, and she'd come to the window. A lot of times I was handing her things through the window. She was handing me things through the window. There are times she had beautiful flowers in front. Jerry loved flowers. She loved beauty. And she'd get out there, and she knew, and someone said, you know you're not supposed, oh, they won't mind. And then you go into her house and you see this beautiful bouquet of flowers. She did a lot of entertaining in that home. Michael lived there for a while, but on another floor. But she did a lot of entertaining, and even though it was a small apartment, it was full of people, full of her history, and full of love.
Yeah, I can imagine that it was full of love, because that was one of the things when I first met her that I noticed about her, that she was such an outgoing, very loving, very inclusive kind of person, which of course was right up my alley, because I've always believed in diversity. Even when she started and when I started, which was later than she started, there wasn't much diversity. True. Especially in media, where we were. And I can remember my very first job being the first black woman and the first female in that news department as a reporter. And I'm sure people out there can relate to this who've been in even other kinds of positions, that you're not always welcome. They've asked you to come, but they have a certain idea of how you should be there. And I think Jerry found that to be the case too. And she talked about how when she would be pretty vocal and honest about what was actually happening in media, they weren't very happy about it. And I can certainly relate to that.
Well, what you're saying is really, really true. And one of the things that Jerry was so proud of course, were her three sons. As a mother, she loved, and she started college as an older adult because she spent her time raising her sons. She was so proud of them. They were so talented. And really, I met Jerry through Michael. I worked with Michael when I came back from Africa. We were working on something called Project Pyramid, and we wanted to get young people to go to Egypt. Well, he actually went to Egypt, and he came back, Abu Simbel. I had never heard of that. But that's initially how I got to meet Jerry. And then I worked for the city of Oakland, and for a short time I was working directly with Michael for Feather River Camp. He was the director of Feather River Camp up in Quincy, and the whole point was getting urban children to have a camping experience. They'd start at 5 or 6 years old, and bus loads would go up, and they'd spend a week at the creek, at the water, I should say the water hole. But, and there was a train that went through early in the morning. And, you know, this was like being in the wilderness. And it introduced a lot of Oakland children to life in nature. And working, you know, there were times when, because I was working for the city, and Michael and Jerry would be riding up there with us. And one of the favorite times, of course, was the 4th of July. And Michael would be dressed with a top hat, and Willie would have his sailor uniform, and they would have a parade, you know, around celebrating the 4th of July. And Lloyd's famous barbecue.
Well, she seemed like somebody who really just always enjoyed life.
Absolutely.
And really just appreciated all aspects of life. When you were talking about Michael, I saw an interview with her where she said that she referred to Michael as Michael the Archangel.
Archangel
She said because
Michael.
he always had her back. And so I can just imagine, even though I was at the funeral, at his funeral, I didn't get to talk to her after that, but I can just imagine how much that must have just cut her to the quick, so to speak, that she lost Michael so soon, you know?
Well, actually, at the 90th birthday celebration, which was over, I think it's Lakeside Baptist, I mean, all kinds of friends, family, and personality were there. And Michael spoke. And, you know, later that year he passed. We didn't know that he was not well. I mean, you can look now at the photo and see, okay, because
I was really shocked when I heard he had passed.
At the time when it was time to cut the cake, Michael and I were cutting the cake together and, you know, helping to get people served. But yes, Archangel Michael really supported her in many, many ways.
Yeah,
And
she said he always had her back.
Absolutely, and Ted as well, because when she left Alice Street, they decided, no, you shouldn't, you know, you don't need to be living there alone, and she was moved out to a very fine facility in Antioch. And she was the life of the party. Her book had come out, and they really wanted to name, you know, give her some credit in Antioch, but because she was not from there, they couldn't. But she was the life of the party, and as she always is. And when I think about even after she left, she never really left the media. She left TV, but she never really left the media. And one of the events that really is so special, we had the art ship docking ceremony in 1999, and she was the MC, and we had this big ship coming down the canal, and the idea is we're bringing the art ship, we're bringing art to the community. It was a big festival, and we had a torch like they have in the Olympics, and man brought it from the ship, and he ran up to the stage, and he gave this torch to Jerri, and Jerri spoke for a while, and then she gave it to a young man. He was, you know, a teen, representing the elder to the young, and he came out and he brought it to this large altar that had candles, and then people who were there could light their candle from this, and so it was the idea of
Passing the torch,
bringing this to the community. And she was she was the elegant MC that she always is. Wole Soyinka of Nigeria was also there. It was really quite a special time, and I just appreciate how her generosity. You know, she emceed several local events like the pro that she is. Yeah. And the other thing that I really appreciate is that she was an ambassador of love. She really, really was. And you mentioned earlier the diversity. I know that she spent time in Japan.
Right. And she worked in Hawaii for a while.
Yes.
Even though that's not a foreign country, it still is a different kind of culture for those of us who live on the mainland.
Absolutely.
And just the fact that as an African American woman, she could go to Hawaii and get a job and work there. That's not a small, easy task. You know, it's not an easy task for any of us in any place, but when you're going to some place that is not your everyday culture and what you're used to, much harder, and she pulled that off.
Well, you know, I remember her talking about growing up in Berkeley, and when the Japanese internment, that her family and other families moved into the homes of the Japanese people so that they would have those homes when they returned. And so I think she had a sense of appreciating all cultures from a very young age. And
she really fell in love with the people in Japan, in Kyoto, when she went there, didn't she? And she, I think, went back several times, didn't she?
Yes, she did, and came back and shared that experience. I remember the event at the San Francisco Public Library, where there were many poets from the East Bay and media celebrities who read parts of her book. But that was a life-changing event for her. It's no question about that. But
in fact,
it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I saw the video of that. I wasn't there for that event. That was back in 2013. But I did see the video from that. And one of the things that was interesting in both that video that I saw about her and another one is that she always mentioned how something was a life-changing experience. And she talked about when she went back to school at the age of 37, how that was a life-changing experience. And then the people that she had met, the mentors who she talked about, who Arnold Toynbee especially, in terms of his history, she talked about how that was a life-changing experience. And then she talked about the time in Kyoto. And so as I would listen to this, I thought, she was somebody who was constantly sort of reinventing herself, not leaving behind who she had been before, but adding on and reinventing and enhancing who she was. And I thought it was really, really funny when I heard her say at that library event that she had now decided on a new career as a photojournalist. And at that time, I think she was probably 81 or 82. So I thought, isn't that lovely that she could, at that age, say, I'm taking on a whole new career and going to do something different?
We would say joie de vivre.
Yes, definitely. Or as Ray Taliaferro said that day, she taught us all what it means to live life to the fullest and to live life well.
Absolutely. And, you know, to have a life that was really not a private life because of the celebrity of her sons and her own celebrity. And I think about her generosity, how much she loved to entertain in that little apartment. And she loved people. And yes, there were challenges, but she handled them graciously, and she maintained her own integrity. She was always true to what she believed, how she felt. She expressed that. And I think, you know, we use the term woke now.
Yeah.
Jerri has been woke for a long time. And I think that she certainly enlightened and enriched so many others from many walks of life.
Since you knew her for so long, what do you think was the biggest lesson that you took away from her life or from her friendship with you?
My lesson is the value of love, and that even if you have differences, you can move beyond those differences. You can forgive people. You can get over it. You can move on with openness, with compassion, with trust, and with joy.
Yes. And I think really for me, I didn't know her as well as you knew her, and spend the kind of time that you spent with her. But I think for me, just from observing her, from the few times I met her, from watching the video interviews with her, I think the biggest lesson for me was this sort of being able to continue to live your life at any age and create new adventures for yourself, because that's sort of the way I've always been. And my friends will often say to me, I can't believe you're doing this. For example, just a couple of years ago, I finished my 7th continent and went to Antarctica. And many of my friends were like, why are you going to Antarctica? And I said, because I've never been. And I kind of get that sense that she was that kind of person who said, I'm going to do this because it's something I haven't tried, and I think I'd like to do it, and I'll find the good and the joy in it. And I really like that about her.
She didn't let anything limit her. She expanded the boundaries, if you will. And I think, she made the most of her relationships, the most of her family, the most of her career, because she did, as you said, reinvent herself or take on evolve in new dimensions.
Exactly, yeah. Not reinventing and getting rid of the old, but adding to, adding something new. Yeah,
absolutely.
I really like that about her life. It really, I think, is very much a lesson for so many young people today who feel like 50 is old, or they feel like if I haven't done it by 25, I can't do it. Not true, because I've certainly found that, and I'm past 50, that you can really continue to add on and do things that are meaningful, not just to you, but to other people.
Well, I think it's living life as an adventure.
Yes.
As an adventure.
Yes.
And certainly when I think of Jerri, yes, she's not here in the physical form, but her spirit is very much alive in the hearts, in the memories of so many people whose lives she touched, and touched deeply, So, I'm not sad. I'm really knowing that as an ancestor, she is still communicating with us and still communicating the message of love and mutual respect and compassion. And I hope that I can also be remembered for someone who shared my gifts generously and made a difference, because Jerri absolutely, she may not even realize the difference that she made in so many lives.
And I think maybe the reason she didn't realize it, because she wasn't doing it just for that purpose, although she did do it for that. She wanted to pass it on. But I think it's because, like you said, she was enjoying her life and doing the things that really fascinated her and interested her. And she was such a lifelong learner. I mean, she was always interested in learning new things and finding out about new cultures. So I think the fact that her life was an example for so many people was maybe not exactly what she set out to do, but because she was living her life so well, others noticed, and it did become an example. As I said, as I was listening to her, I thought, how great to take on something new at age 81. I'm not there yet, but I like the idea that she was able to do it.
Well, I think anyone who remembers Jerri remembers her with love. And I'm just happy to have had the chance to know her and spend time and meet so many other people that she knew that became my friends as well. I mean, there's a big East Bay community, there's a big San Francisco community, there's a big global community who know and appreciate Jerrylange.
I was thinking too, when we were talking about that global community, about some of the things that are going on now in terms of the violence and the hate against Asians and Asian Americans, and how much she would probably be, if she were still here, be speaking out against that. Especially since some of those acts of violence have been committed by young black men, which is something that she would have tried to get them to see where they are alike and not so different, and why that kind of violence against them is really violence against themselves in a way. So it's sad that she's leaving us at this time when that is becoming such a big story. I think she would have been out there in the middle of it.
Well, it's interesting
talking about it.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because again, when she lived on Alice Street, she would walk all the way to Jack London, which meant she walked through Chinatown, and she bought food, and would come back, and at a certain point, Jerry, don't walk down there anymore. But that was her exercise, that was her fresh air, and it was something that she did and felt very safe, very comfortable, and she would have something to say, but again, based on the way that she grew up in Berkeley and the values that her parents passed on. And you look at the work that Michael did in terms of theater, the work that Ted did, and her son James as a business person. All of it is a real testimony to a woman who valued life, who valued education.
Yeah, definitely education.
That idea of, because I consider myself a lifelong learner.
I do too, yeah.
It's a way of, it's a grand adventure. That's all I can say, a grand adventure. And Jerri, we love you, the world loves you, and your spirit is very much alive and well in our hearts.
And even though I didn't know her as well as Harriet did, I've been sitting here appreciating that I am getting to know another aspect of her and getting to know other parts of her by talking to you, and also getting to know you better. But that's such a wonderful thing to know, that you've left a legacy that lives on past you, and that brings other people of like minds together, even though they may not have been together when you were alive. So we should all be so lucky to have that kind of memory, to people to remember us in that way. And my mother always said, give me my flowers while I live, because once I'm gone, I won't know. And I think she did get some of those, but if she's up there looking down, she's probably seeing some new flowers being given today. Thank you for coming and doing this with me, and thank Johnny for bringing us both together.
Well, I want to also recognize Joyce Gordon for allowing us to be in her space.
And all this beautiful art that's around us that I'm having to keep a very tight string on my purse, so I won't go home with any one of these pieces, because I would love to, but I'm trying to downsize. So it's really beautiful. Yes, thank you, Joyce. And thank you, Johnny Burrell, for doing this, for bringing us together to talk about Jerri.
Thank you.
Hi, Jerri. Where do I begin? I love you. I miss you. I remember all of those days where I sat with you in your apartment, listening to Sarah Vaughan and Frank Sinatra as you told me the stories of your life, as we looked through books and articles and just had magnificent, wonderful conversation. You brought me so many blessings, and you taught me so many lessons, as you've done for everyone. Jerri, thank you for coming into this world and standing up with integrity, conviction, passion for helping people. You taught me and everyone around you that we don't do what we do for money. We don't do what we do for fame. We do it because we care, because we know that each person can make a difference in this world. Jerri, I know that you were like a butterfly in my life. You came down and you just added such brilliance. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know that you're resting happily and peacefully in heaven right now. And wherever you are there, you are dancing.